it's Bianca. Today I wanted to talk about authenticity, especially through the eyes of somebody that has borderline personality disorder, because it kind of does make it a little bit hard to love yourself, because who are we, bitch? Is basically the underlying thing. And that journey of finding yourself after struggling with BPD for so long feels almost impossible. There are so many days where I wake up and I'm confident in who I am, but it literally could be the switch of a plan, or it could be the switch of somebody's perspective on my life, and all of a sudden I'm back to that thinking, I'm not doing right, I'm not doing enough, and that authentic part of me that wants to love myself for who I am feels like it's not able to ever reach there. I think that I struggle a lot with being consistent with loving myself, but I don't really struggle anymore with being consistent to being true with myself, because before I used to be true to myself and then kind of notice the reactions that people had and then pedal back on it and then just kind of fall into things. But now it's a lot more uncomfortable because I've decided to stay true to myself, and then it becomes really uncomfortable because people are questioning you, you're questioning yourself, you're trying not to hear those external voices, you're trying not to hear those internal inner critic dialogue that you've had for years. You're trying to not avoid it, but hear it out, and it becomes really hard to get out of patterns that you had been following for years. It becomes exhausting, and sometimes it's just easier to mask and it's easier to hide because it's less lonely and it's less confirming of nobody wants to be around me. But it's just because we're in environments that we tend to stay in are toxic, because that's the kind of environment that was the breeding ground for this disorder. So we tend to stay in those toxic situations. So when things that aren't really familiar us start to come about, it feels really scary. So being authentic was something that became really important to me. The idea of that constantly turning in my brain became so exhausting, to a point where one day I was just I'm going to be myself completely. And people even on YouTube tell me you shouldn't be posting these things, you're very too vulnerable, you'll easily get manipulated. I used to be so vulnerable and so easy to manipulate when I was not myself, because I was putting on this perfect persona that I thought was a perfect persona. I thought that in order for me to succeed in life, in order for me to feel loved, I have to be this type of person, and I had to be different people for everybody, because I felt if they yelled at me or something, that I wasn't doing something right, when in reality I was completely denying myself of my humanness. That people yell, people are angry, people are happy, and they'll still love you. But for me, I never understood that, because anytime I would do something bad, I would get the silent treatment, or I've had people not wanting to be my friend anymore, and I never had the type of people in my life that were sorry. It was always I ended up having to apologize, even for things that I didn't do. Life became a life in which I was living through the roles and the words of everybody else around me, and completely denying myself of who I was. But then as I started to get older, I realized that there are a lot of inauthentic people on this earth, and that I didn't want to be another one of them. I didn't want to be a person who hid their emotions, or who would say things in a cold way to get things that I want or whatever. I didn't want to be that. I've always wanted to be a person that lives so true from my heart and doesn't have to fragment myself. We live in a society where it's a shadow of people that fear their own judgments, and then when you come up to them authentically, they judge you and they put you into a kind of box as weird or different, because it's that quote where it's you can't meet people, people can only meet you to the point that they've met themselves. It's kind of that quote. Vulnerability is one of the most beautiful things that you can open yourself up to, because vulnerability really makes people feel seen and heard, and it makes people feel love, because when you are talking to somebody that is not being vulnerable, there's always going to be that feeling where I can't get to you. There's a wall that's being put up and I can't get to you, and I'm having a hard time understanding you, and I'm having a hard time relating myself to you. Like, a lot of people just live in this space where they're okay with being somebody else and it will get them through the day. But I think it's so important to be able to pair the two, because when you live so inauthentically, you start to lose all trust in yourself, and the only person we have in the end of our lives is ourselves. And for the past few months, I literally have been going back and forth and back and forth. Should I do this? Should I be this? Because I was so scared of all the judgments all the time. If I continue to listen to the judgments that come with every age, like every age has a certain list of judgments. I don't know who the fuck made that, but I'm serious. Like, every age somebody will ask you these same 5 questions, just worded differently. And then you're just like, okay, if I don't put aside the time to get to know myself and take away the things in my life that make me question who I am, when deep down I know who I am, it's just that I have a hard time accessing it because of borderline, because there's that constant shift in stability within myself, like stability of myself. If I don't take time to just be alone and really get to know myself, I will start basing everything that I do on all of the things that people around me say. I start basing, oh, I should be in college and I should be doing that just to appear to other people that I had my shit together, when in reality I had nothing together. And I want to find a spot within my life where I can just feel happy and feel that my authenticity is good enough, and that it is loving enough, and it's able to be loved, and that I'm able to also love it. Like, borderline personality disorder is so demonized for some reason, and in reality a lot of us are really struggling to fit into a world that wasn't built for us, to fit into a world that was built to take away your emotions and to hide them, and to take your emotions home with you, to not express your feelings. It's just so fucking exhausting. Blah 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 blah. That's what it feels like. Or people not wanting to show their real selves in front of their friends because they're too scared of what they might think. But then it's like, it's going to come out at one point or another, and you're like, oh, I never saw that side of you. So always bring your truest self to the table. There is so much beauty in being authentic, so much beauty in loving everything that you do always, and loving who you are, and loving your mistakes without feeling like these are reasons people are going to pull away from me. The reality is, in everything, people are scared of even themselves. So them pulling away is their own fear. Like, it's like a lot of the times, like with borderline, I feel like we internalize everything. Like, it's my fault that this happened. It's my fault that this happened. And maybe sometimes it is. And it's okay that it is your fault. That's part of being human. But I think, like, the biggest, most important thing to me is that being authentic means even when you're hearing somebody telling you that this isn't going to work, that's not going to work, I'm going to try it myself. Like, you need to be vulnerable, but in the sense where you have control of the parts that your vulnerability might be hurt by. Because with borderline, being vulnerable can really be a trigger. But it's like, sometimes I just have to remind myself in every situation, am I being authentic before I go into it? And sometimes even just that will start the little thoughts in my head that are just like, I want to be authentic. Instead of like hearing the voices of all the people that have always told me that I shouldn't be this and shouldn't be that. Sometimes just kind of rewiring that one part of just like, am I being authentic in this moment, is going to help you so much. It's going to help you from masking and feeling uncomfortable around people. For example, I have a friend group that I'm in, and a lot of them are authentic, a lot of them are nice, but a lot of times, like, there are people that I wish had more empathy. I used to get really triggered in this group because I was just kind of a background character, because I feel like a lot of us with borderline are background characters because we're just trying to observe and find ways to like get into the conversation. But then at one point I just decided I'm going to be authentic, And I was. They called me weird. Of course, they still say it, or they still question me, like, how come you're like this? How come you're like that? I said, because I want to love myself, and I'm not going to love myself through the eyes of you, or through the eyes of you, or through your words, or through your words. It's just more steps towards knowing myself, towards knowing what I need, and towards knowing how to be a kinder, more loving person that isn't just walking on eggshells and trying to be everything for everybody else. I'm not a doll. I'm a person, I'm a human, and I have so much love to give in my heart, and so much personality, and so much excitement all the time. And I don't want to dim my light to fit into the shadows of other people, because those are their shadows. I want to be my own light, and I want to have my own shadow, and I want to be comfortable in both, not like a stranger to both. I need to be comfortable with both in order for me to love myself. You start realizing that there are things that you can do. You start realizing that your goals aren't unachievable. That you can go talk to that person in a park that you've always wanted to talk to. You can go join that silent disco. But it's just like you have to become comfortable with the fact that being neurodivergent or having borderline is uncomfortable. And it's uncomfortable, and it wasn't your fault. It's not your fault that this developed, but you can learn how to live it, and you can learn how to live it to the fullest. Even like stepping out of relationships for a while, things that are triggers, because I know for me, relationships used to be a really big trigger because I felt like I was masking a lot. So stepping away from that, and then finding a group of people that make you feel happy, that make you feel like your weirdness is okay. And that's beautiful, because there's people out there that exist. There's a whole world out there. And it's like sometimes we just get caught up in our story of how we feel and having borderline. And yes, every day is going to be a challenge. I'm constantly in battle. This is me talking right now. I might go cry 10 minutes later. But I'm just saying, like, there is definitely hope. Anyways, guys, hope you like my video, and I love you so much. See you in the next video. Bye!